Welcome to Zonie Living. We are in for a real treat. Our guest is the great-granddaughter of Sedona Schnebly, whom the city of Sedona was named after. Journalist and historian Lisa Schnebly Heidinger has done extensive research, interviewing relatives, sorting through correspondence, newspaper clips, and historic documents to follow Sedona's life, from the time she first opened her eyes to the majesty of Oak Creek Canyon and the Red Rock Country in 1901 to the time of her death in 1950. In Lisa's book, The Journal of Sedona Schnably, it appears that Dona, as she was called, was a gifted writer, constantly observing and documenting life in the Arizona Territory. It's difficult to know where Sedona leaves off and where her great-granddaughter Lisa, also a gifted writer, steps in. Lisa joins us now from Sedona. Hey, hi Lisa.
How are you?
Hey, it's always so great to see you.
And you also.
Oh, thank you. It hit me, many thoughts hit me as I was reading the Journal of Sedona. And first of all, the book so poetically describes the sights and smells of Oak Creek Canyon, but also captures how a woman who wasn't raised in the West was living her life as a pioneer. Her world included interesting characters like lumberjacks and trappers, yet the life she knew was one of a more civilized society back in Missouri. And I'm wondering, you had to go deep inside her head, and she must have felt like she knew two very different worlds. How would you describe Sedona Schnebly?
Wow, that's almost two separate questions. So let me
It probably
take
is,
the
yeah.
description first. I would describe her as a very well-bred, prosperous, proper young woman raised in Gorin, Missouri, where she had elocution lessons. They had gas lamps. Her father was the second richest merchant in Gorin, although how they knew that, I've never figured out. And she was a very genteel person. She loved art, music, culture, language. She was cultured and cultivated and deeply reserved. And when she and Carl met, I think opposites attracted. He had never met a stranger. He was kind of fearless, very comfortable, very at ease, and they made it work from those two very different backgrounds. As far as her having one foot in the East and one in the West, I referred to that a great deal in the book because I think it must have been almost a constant source of wonder and maybe concern to her that everything she knew growing up, she married Carl on her 20th birthday and they came out, fell away when she came west. And she had opportunities for fresh starts in new places that people in Gorin could never even have dreamed of. And so at the same time, she gave up the comfort of the family doctor and the corner store and essentially even civilization. You've been in Sedona at night. You know how
Oh, yeah.
dark it gets here at night, even today.
Hmm.
And when they arrived, just before dark fell, 5 families lived in the entire area.
Oh, my gosh.
How dark was that? And now she's in a place where all she knows about are there's wild animals,
Sure.
and Carl has a rifle and a shotgun, and they're it.
Oh,
They're it. So her process of getting to know the area and being shaped by the area, even as they shaped it, building the big house and planting crops, I think was a very mutual process.
yes, and you did write how Sedona followed her husband, and we'll call him Carl. I believe it's T.C. Schnebly,
Correct.
formally.
Theodore
Okay.
Carlton. And so he always signed everything TC and she called him Carl.
And I thought it was very interesting that they left their small town of Missouri because of the condemnation of his Presbyterian religion. And then she traveled by train, which sounds better than a wagon. But as she contemplates that, is it actually better than a wagon? It looks like she brought two very young children, and they didn't change out their clothes. And you capture that so beautiful. She lands in this amazingly gorgeous area, and her first thoughts are, I wish I weren't here. I'm exhausted.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Sedona and Carl settled on 80 acres, as you point out in the story, in Oak Creek Canyon. And I was wondering, Lisa, is that where the Slide Rock area is today?
Actually, no, but it's easy to identify. When you're coming up 179 from the valley, you get to the corner where they have a Schnebly Hill Road traffic circle. Right there on your left is Tlaquepaque and Los
Oh,
Obrigados.
sure.
That was their land. And it
Oh,
basically was fronted by the road you would then continue to drive on past Talakipaki up to Brewer Road. And the
okay.
80 acres goes however far south it would need to encompass 80 acres that are now Los Abrigados, Talakipaki, and the land to Brewer Road.
Oh, such a beautiful area. I can only imagine how gorgeous and dark and wild that would have been in there. Also, Carl and his brother named the post office station Sedona, which would become the name of the town. And I felt like she was embarrassed. In fact, I think you point that out. She was a very quiet and reserved woman, and she was a little bit embarrassed about that kind of recognition. And then, of course, Carl built Schnebly Hill Road, and
Yes.
I love your notations about the people of northern Arizona who are pioneering families that their descendants are still there and working and in politics and education and all the things that they were then. You mentioned Mr. George Babbitt, whom
Yes.
Carl spoke with about the road that he wanted to build, and Carl was very proud of that road, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, because it really changed this area. He was the biggest booster of this area, the biggest devotee ever, probably. And so when he first moved in here, it would take 4 days to go down to Jerome and through the Verde Valley and up to Flagstaff. And by building the road, he got that down to a day and a half. One both ways, day and a half to get up and back. So to him, it opened it to the world and let people who came west, either for tuberculosis or out
Sure.
of curiosity or for adventure, see this area, get to Sedona, Oak Creek, much more quickly and easily. And therefore, he didn't ever name it. When they had moved away for a while and then returned, it was referred to as Schnebly Hill Road. And I think he was probably a little surprised that any vestige of them was still there, had strengthened and grown in their absence, and it pleased him mightily.
I love that. Well, Lisa, you live and work in Flagstaff and Sedona, as well as Phoenix and Tucson in your television and newspaper reporting career. And
Which
now
is where
in,
you and I first met.
yes, yes, exactly. Love that. And now in philanthropy with Health First Foundation, you must feel so deeply connected to the area, all of Arizona, but especially northern Arizona.
You are completely correct. It is, if I am within the shadow of the peaks, if I can see the peaks or know that the peaks are right here, everything is turned up to 11. I just am more alive. And I don't know if it's genetic. If I've been told that DNA actually imprints even the next generation. And TC's rabid, bone deep love for the place that went into his son, his oldest son, Ellsworth, my grandpa, and into my dad, and into me. When I first started this job, which was October 10th of 2021, and I pulled up and I saw the red rocks, I said out loud to TC, I'm back
Oh,
and I get to help.
oh,
And
Lisa, I
every
love
time I
it.
come up, I feel like I'm back and I get to help. And it's the richest thing I've ever done. I thought TV was the richest thing I would ever do, or maybe then the Arizona Centennial, but nope, this is even better.
Oh my gosh. Well, I imagine your dad, Larry Schnebly, longtime broadcaster in Arizona, also felt this rich connection to his heritage.
Very much so. And I think it was imbued directly from him into me. And he retired the day I turned about 30 or something. I bet we've taken, oh, I don't know, between 100 and 200 trips up here, as well as other parts of the state. And I call it the red setter gene, joyously jumping into an open car door just because you get to go somewhere. But where is it more alive than Northern Arizona? And stopping at Middle Verde and getting the coffee and then seeing the peaks across the Verde Valley and all of it
Sure.
is just, it never fades.
I
Bonnie,
was
it
just
never,
thinking that you never get over the beauty of the peaks the first time you see them coming over that big hill. And of course, the red rocks. And it's always special, isn't it?
it always is. It's like coffee. Coffee is never less good than it was the day before. That's how this area
that's
is.
that's true as well. You mentioned to me that you were so deeply involved in the research, and of course, you had to get into Sedona Schnebly's heart and soul. And you never met her. You never met your great grandmother, but your dad had, and he read your book several times. And what did he have to say
Yes.
about it?
He read it 6 times to be exact.
That's a good
He was
dad.
a font of information about both his grandparents. Fortunately for me, because I think Tad, my grandpa, felt guilty when his baby sister Pearl was killed. You know, we always tell the
Mm.
kid, keep an eye on your sister. He never left his mother for very long or very far. And that kept Larry and his sisters, Patsy and Paula, deeply enmeshed with TC and Sedona, which was a boon to me because all three of the grandchildren had different memories. And hearing each of them talk about them kind of gave me more of a 3D look at TC and Sedona than I might have otherwise had. Also, their daughter Clara was a wonderful resource, and of course Tad himself. But yeah, um, Larry's knowledge of them was deep and helpful. And when he said at one point, every time I read the book, I feel like I know my family a little better than I did, which makes me feel like he gave me the gift of them, and then I bounced it off a different surface and it refracted to come back to him in a different way.
What a compliment. Well, I love how the book describes the red rock formations. One of the passages was the view is always fascinating, the light constantly changing. There are more varieties of red and brown here than I knew existed. The book feels so genuine. You feel like you're right there with Sedona Schnebly going for a hike in the red rock country.
There is no greater compliment than that. I really appreciate hearing that. That's how it felt to me writing it. And if it can feel that way to you reading it, that's
Oh,
perfect.
it is such a gift to us. The journal also brings to life the feelings and events of the time, the class differences among people, how women were regarded, a lot of fear of hostile Indians, wild animals, diseases like tuberculosis, as you mentioned, and also World War II, which I thought was really interesting. So you write a December 7th, 1941 passage of how Sedona would process this. And she says, war again. Now we're in it. Pearl Harbor has been bombed. Uncertainty and fear hangs over everything like our own cloud of spiritual ash, and we must give it time, as we would literal ash, to settle. Do we really have to go through a great war again? She asks. This passage makes you realize how difficult and scary life must have been through so many changes for her. We also experience her growth and maturity as she becomes a confident, strong woman over time. And I know that is a really powerful statement and one that you are hoping readers pick up on.
Absolutely. Bonnie, if I could be of any snit of value to the larger world putting this book out, one of the things that I wanted to really bring out is the universality that I think maybe particularly women face of uncertainty and having to overcome a lot of things and security, and finally getting to a point where you think, you know what? And I thought this about Ed Abbey. He wrote strongly, not because he had the credentials, but because he didn't believe anybody needed credentials. And I love the idea that as we get older, as she got older also, and there's a picture of her in the book in knickers. She wore knickers in her later
Ah,
years.
that must have
And
been
she
unusual.
was so proper. But when she was alone here, she'd worn overalls. So I thought, okay, there's a streak of freedom in you, lady. You're thinking for yourself. And I think that as we get older, we realize we don't need the credentials. Whatever puzzle pieces you and I and other women are given, our charge is to put them in the larger puzzle because otherwise the world misses them. And I think that's a true call to women as we get older.
Absolutely. Lisa, well said. The Journal of Sedona Schnably was deeply sincere. It brought us right into the wild Arizona territory and the peace and beauty of Sedona's world. I felt like I knew her, and it really made me cry. I mean, I was a mess when the book describes her saying goodbye in her writings to the life and the people that she loved. Lisa, that could not have been an easy chapter for you to write.
Thank you. First of all, thank you because I cried when I wrote that
Oh,
and when I wrote Pearl, the death of Pearl,
of
and was
course.
reminded of that movie Romancing the Stone, where Kathleen Turner is writing and crying, and so blatantly full of her own whatever the heck that it made me cringe then
Mm,
when I wept during the writing. But I also think that big things make us cry. And what's bigger than dying, moving
yeah.
on? I don't think there's a larger mystery or journey to anybody alive. So thank you for that. it was good to write it and to kind of see it differently than I perhaps had before that point, as she pointed out that all of nature is about cycle, and that we don't see a snow melt and go, oh, that snow lost its battle with spring. It's supposed to melt. A beautiful ponderosa falls and becomes a snag, and we don't go, oh, that ponderosa failed. It needs to be a snag to feed, nature that exists there.
It is all so beautifully written. And as you mentioned, I especially like how she explains so beautifully how we all are part of the world and nature and the cycle of life. Lisa, I want to thank you for opening Sedona's world for us. I can't wait until the next time when we get to talk together again.
Such an honor to be here. Thank you, Bonnie.
The Journal of Sedona Schnably by Lisa Schnebly Heidinger is a love story for the land and the people that wraps around America's love for the wide open spaces, the adventure of the West, the marvel of nature, and a sincere appreciation for family and community and what it means to rely on each other and create together. You can find your copy on Amazon and read more about Sedona and Lisa at flagstaffbusinessnews.com and quadcitiesbusinessnews.com. I will leave you with this excerpt from the Journal of Sedona Schnably as Lisa captures Sedona's love for the area. Even after decades, I've never quite found the words to describe what the scents of the creek do inside the nose. My spirits began to rise like fish to the surface of water, looking for good things, even expecting good things, entranced by the beauty before me, as still as any empty cathedral. It also brims with life and energy. I could hear the creek rushing and journeying while the birds practiced their morning songs. That's Zonie Living, business, adventure, and leadership. I'm Bonnie Stevens.